there is that magnificent statue of Elijah in St. Peter's Basilica behind the papal altar. The inscription on the pedestal says that the two Carmelite families put this statue here in honor of Pater et Dux, Father and Leader. I'm Father Leopold Gluckert, Carmelite. Many of you already know that the earliest Carmelites were hermits in the caves along the slopes of Mount Carmel in the Holy Land. This rather odd beginning is going to be capsulized by the lives and actions of Elisha and his mentor Elijah. Their stories are in the first and second books of Kings in the Bible. Elijah was probably one of the absolute greatest of the Old Testament prophets. He lived in the northern kingdom of Israel and did most of his important work there. He, above all, lived in a conscious knowledge of God's presence in his life and everything that he did. What made Elijah distinctive was that he was a genuine fireball. He was not afraid to confront bad kings like King Achab, false prophets like the prophets of the god Baal, and wicked queens like Jezebel. Elijah began his challenge to the cult of Baal by confronting Achab and Jezebel in their palace and announcing that God would stop all rain and precipitation until he gave the word that it was over. And this is going to be a particularly important challenge because Baal was seen as the god of the weather. He controlled the rain, he controlled the precipitation that made the crops grow, and so if Baal was pleased, the rain would fall, there would be a good harvest. What this actually means is that Elijah was not slapping Achab or Jezebel in the face, he was slapping Baal, their god, which was probably the worst thing he could have done. Once the rain stops and Israel starts to dry up, the Lord said to Elijah, "Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Wadi Kerth, east of the Jordan." God says, "You will drink from the stream, and I have ordered the ravens to feed you there." This is the quiet period in Elijah's ministry that has become highly symbolic from the Carmelites. The story that evolved through the Middle Ages based on this biblical passage is that God takes care of those who live in his presence. The Carmelites have evolved this dictate of God, and that flight to the Wadi Kerth symbolizes a personal struggle to root out personal sin, temptations, distractions, any kind of false gods in the individual's life. This is essentially part one of the two-sided spirituality that comes through Elijah. The second part is that God's feeding and watering of Elijah through the ravens and the freshwater stream. This symbolizes God's action at filling the soul of the individual with God's presence. The individual person is now being guided by the will of God. God is driving the bus, so to speak. And the first part depends on the individual, purging the evil from one's life and one's soul. The second part, God takes over and nourishes the spirituality of the individual person. Now, this is all going to come to a head with the dramatic challenge of the prophets of Baal on the slopes of Mount Carmel. You can read about this in the books of Kings. It's a very dramatic story. And Elijah channels God's help to defeat the false prophets, to burn up the sacrifice on the altar. And, of course, this is also the sign that the rain is going to return. And Elijah has fulfilled the will of God for this particular episode. Now, all of a sudden, Elijah loses his courage. Jezebel has threatened to kill him, which is nothing new because they were at odds for many years anyway. But suddenly Elijah runs for his life. He leaves the northern kingdom and goes south to the southern kingdom and Mount Horeb. He hides in a cave and is feeling very sorry for himself. The word of God comes to Elijah, challenging him. He says, Elijah, why are you here? First of all, it's a reminder of the ministry that Elijah had. It's also a bit of a chastisement that he is in the southern kingdom where he doesn't belong, whereas the kingdom of Israel has people that needs the encouragement that he can give. Elijah replies, I've always been very zealous for you. The motto of the Carmelites, Zelo zelato sum pro Domino Deo exercituum. But he points out, the people of Israel have rejected you. I'm the only good guy left. Nobody's supporting me. Everybody has abandoned your worship. And God basically takes him seriously enough to continue the chastisement. He says, go and stand at the mouth of the cave, because the Lord will be passing by. Well, this very dramatic scenario has Elijah standing at the entrance to the cave, and there's a strong wind, there's an earthquake, there's a runaway fire. These were traditional manifestations of the presence of God, such as Moses had experienced on his mountain. But it points out that God is not in any of those physical things. But then Elijah experiences a very gentle whisper, a tiny breeze, according to some translations, or the sound of pure silence, as it is sometimes called. So Elijah covers his face because he recognizes the presence of God right there with him, before him. And God then says, go back to the north where you belong. Get serious about my trust in you, and go back and proclaim the fact that there is the one and only God of Israel. And God tells Elijah that there are 3 people that he is to anoint for their future in God's presence. First of all, anoint Hazael as kingdom of Aram, the kingdom of Syria. Secondly, anoint Jehu as the king of Israel. Achab has not measured up to God's wishes, and so Achab and his whole dynasty are now being replaced. And then finally, he is to anoint Elisha as the prophet to follow him in his ministry. When he finds Elisha, he is plowing the fields with a yoke of oxen. It's evident from the story that Elisha was very prosperous. He was living a good life and was very faithful to God. But Elijah calls him and anoints him as a prophet to change his entire world. From now on, it's going to be God in charge of Elisha as well, and he is going to have much to learn as a servant, an apprentice, a follower of Elijah. Elijah symbolizes the call by spreading his cloak over Elisha's shoulders, And that cloak itself is going to be symbolic of Elijah's entire ministry, which is now passing to Elisha because Elijah himself is finished. God has let him know that he is going to be called to heaven in a rather dramatic fashion. So the two of them cross the Jordan. Once again, Elijah uses his mantle, his cloak, to stop the waters of the Jordan. The two of them pass through on dry land, very similar to the way that the people of Israel were led out of Egypt by Moses, parting the waters of the Jordan so that they could cross safely. Elijah is now taken up to heaven in a fiery chariot. This is a very dramatic scene. It's a reminder of sorts that Elijah did not actually die. He was taken to heaven with the power of God, and many scripture scholars have said over the centuries that it means that Elijah will return at the end of time. Elisha sees Elijah going up. He had already asked Elijah for a double portion of his spirit. A double portion in the Jewish understanding was what the eldest son of a large family received. All of the inheritance was divided between all of the male heirs, but the eldest received a double portion. Most of the miracles that Elisha performs are done for individual people, showing the mercy of God, the care of God for even the small effects of people's lives. There's another series of miracles in favor of a very generous, kind woman, the Shunamanite, so-called. She's a person who saw the holiness of Elisha and made a place for him to stay whenever he was passing through her residence. And by way of gratitude, Elisha notices that she has no children, so he announces that when I pass by here at this time next year, you will have a son. That comes to pass. Some years later, the son is afflicted with sunstroke and appears to be dead. Elisha returns, restores life to the boy, and in the process makes sure that this family does not run out of oil or flour for their nourishment, once again symbolizing God's presence and God's care for even lowly people, that nobody is forgotten. Probably my favorite miracle of the many that Elisha performs is his encounter with Naaman the Syrian. Naaman was the commander of the Syrian armies, very successful soldier, a good person, well respected by even his own servants, but he was afflicted with leprosy. Well, Naaman goes prepared for whatever the prophet would tell him to do, and he's a little bit upset that Elisha doesn't even come out of his cave to talk to him face to face. He just sends out word with his servant that Naaman should go to the Jordan River and bathe 7 times in the Jordan's water. Well, as things turn out, the 7 bathings in the Jordan River cure the leprosy, and Naaman returns praising the God of Israel and saying that it's the only God that he will worship from now on, to such a degree that he's going to ask permission to take baskets of dirt from Israel as a kind of holy place that goes with him when he returns back home. The rest of Elisha's ministry is going to be hovering around a group of followers that are known as the Sons of the Prophets, or the Prophets Guild, and it's not too hard a stretch for the earliest Carmelites to see themselves as the descendants of those followers of Elijah and Elisha. Likewise, living on the slopes of Mount Carmel, living in the conscious presence of God, and above all, trying to follow that little two-part bit of spirituality of purging the evil from their own lives and waiting for God to take over and draw them closer by God's own power. So, the bottom line for many of the so-called Carmelite virtues, the favorite things that Carmelites like to focus on, are these. First of all, reflecting on what is called the law of the Lord day and night. The Carmelite rule uses this term, the law of the Lord, to symbolize the entire relationship between God and people. And it's the one thing that occupies a Carmelite's attention, along with whatever else happens to be done for the glory of God and the welfare of God's people. Carmelites focus heavily on the awareness of God's presence, along with anything else that they may be doing. There is a healthy respect for silence and solitude. Once again, it's reflecting the quiet of the fresh air and the uncluttered forces of nature. Carmelites hope to be open to surprise, to different things that come at God's own time and temper, but not trying to figure out that they have already gotten all of the details of the world under control. God is still in charge, so pay attention. And then above all, opposition to false values. The corrupt kings and queens and their false worship in the world of the Old Testament. These things are not to be a part of our lives, and holding up the virtues that come from the one true God are the beginning, the middle, and the end of our life on earth. So this is, in a very short capsule, some of the virtues and the reasons that Carmelites can follow their way of life. I would encourage you to read the stories of Elijah and Elisha in the books of Kings. They're good reading, and I think you'll find them very inspirational. So there we are. Thank you for your attention, and happy reading.